We now know that the secret to creating change in the body through exercise occurs in those deep fatigue points, the HIIT method. And we're seeing the industry changing, right? Quicker workouts, more intense. Well, that's what BFR is. BFR is a biohack. It's a hack into creating more efficient exercise.
Hi, Dr. Mike. Welcome to the show.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thanks, Mark.
Welcome to Peak Performance Perspective, where we help entrepreneurs master health, wealth, and relationships. Now, Dr. Mike, as a former chiropractor who is now internationally recognized as a foremost expert in blood flow restriction training, what does peak performance mean to you?
Well, peak performance means to me getting the most efficient health and fitness out of your body, right? Using techniques, new advances to, in my opinion, accessing the anabolic signal. We'll talk about that, but what that really means is growth hormone, right? So many people are not accessing growth hormone through peak performance and they're missing out on so much health and fitness. And, we'll dive into that, how they're going to tap into that.
For listeners who are unfamiliar with blood flow restriction or BFR, can you explain the science behind it and why it's so effective?
Well, let's talk about where it came from first. A Japanese doctor stumbled upon it in the 1960s. Took him about 30 years to perfect it, but fast forward to 2000, we found it in the World Championship games. The Japanese athletes were doing it, but it was a secret. And we found out what they were doing. And my science advisor, who's really one of the greatest pioneers out there in fitness, Dr. Jim Stray Gunderson, he brought it to the United States, took it up to Park City, Utah, Bodie Miller, Lindsey Vonn, Michaela Schifrin, and now it's out in the general population. We're going to talk about that, but it's called blood flow restriction. Now, the first thought is, ooh, that doesn't sound real safe, Dr. Mike, but it actually is incredibly safe. If you look at my arm here, we have an incoming flow of blood, and then we have an outgoing flow, arterial inflow, venous outflow. That blood carries your primary fuel for working your muscles or oxygen. Everybody knows what the altitude training mask is, right? We see those people putting those on. It reduces oxygen so that you can fatigue quicker and more efficient with endurance exercise. Well, what if we put that oxygen reducing mask? What if we put it on the muscle? Hey, there's an idea. It would be called blood flow restriction. So we're going to talk about, we put these safe and comfortable bands on your arms and legs, and it takes this outflow. Everybody see the rate of that flow? It simply slows it down. That's all, still flowing. And that reduces the amount of oxygen the muscle has to work with. And we're going to dive in, but I just want you to imagine walking will feel like running the stadium stairs. That's kind of what blood flow restriction does.
So, how does slowing down the flow of blood while training and using these bands actually help in production of growth hormone and also muscle stimulus that you usually get from gym from working out with weights?
Well, everybody's heard of aerobic exercise and strength training, right? I know you do it, Mark. That's why CrossFit came along. CrossFit is basically aerobic exercise matched with strength training. Well, when you do those two types of exercises, you're working two different types of muscles and you're using two different types of fuel. Aerobic exercise uses your slow twitch muscles, and the fuel is oxygen. Now we know the benefits are endurance, energy, cardiovascular. Now, when you go work the strength training side, like you lift weights, you're working your fast twitch muscles. The fuel is glycogen or sugar that's converted and put into the muscle. And when you work that side, everybody knows, hey, you get muscle, you get stronger, you get better at performance, and it has all kinds of health benefits. So, what is the purpose really of exercise? It's to create fatigue, right? Everybody knows if you go for a walk, you're not going to see a lot of change. Anybody ever go into the gym, Planet Fitness, and you look up and down the row of cardio people who are just la di da di da? You see any six packs? You see any guns? You see any chisel? You don't see it because they're not fatiguing their muscles deep enough. Now let's go over to the weight side of the gym, right? We go over there and we grab some light weights and we do some light working out. We go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we get a little burn and we stop. But you look over there at the people like Mark, who's a bodybuilder, and you see these people who are grunting and screaming. They don't stop when the burn hits. They keep going. They push deeper in fatigue. So the people who get the real benefit that we're going to teach you want are the people that can create real deep fatigue doing aerobic exercise, kind of like a Peloton 45-minute climb, and then real vigorous weight training. Well, that's hard. And a lot of people have pain or injuries, right? And it takes time. And then there's soreness the next day. What if it all of a sudden became dramatically easier? Go back to the altitude training mask. We're going to put it right here. We're going to slow down the oxygen. So you're on the treadmill going at a simple pace, but you're using oxygen like you're running sprints up and down the steps. You're using more oxygen than's available, and you start to feel the pump and the fatigue. BFR makes that incredibly easy to access, and we're going to talk about it. The endurance benefits, the energy, the cardiovascular benefits. You don't need 30 minutes. You need 3 or 4 minutes of doing your favorite aerobic exercise. Now let's go to some strength training moves. Bicep curls, the typical moves, right? Hey, I'm 61. I can't bang the heavy weights anymore. But even if I did, what if I could do it more efficiently? By reducing oxygen, the muscles get into that burn or lactic acid dramatically quicker. So instead of curling like 40s, you're curling 5 or 10s. And very quickly, you start to feel the pump and the burn in the muscles because there's not enough oxygen. And it feels like you're trying to curl 40 pounds. And you get a workout like you just did super high intensity, but it was light exercise. Here's the crazy part: it actually produces more growth hormone, more nitric oxide. We'll talk about it. And you actually see changes faster than traditional training. And it takes about 10 minutes to do a workout, not 45. It takes about 10 to 15. Now, there's other techniques you can apply if you're a lead athlete or a bodybuilder. But if we're talking general population, imagine now 45-minute workouts are 10 to 12. It doesn't hurt. You get the workout like it was high intensity. You're not sore. You got energy afterward. You wake up the next day and nothing hurts. And your body changes like you did one of the most efficient workouts in your life. You're just now hearing about BFR. That's what blood flow restriction training is starting to show us all across the country.
For those who are familiar with the fact that I went to nationals this year, Dr. Mike's BFR technology products were actually instrumental in getting me prepared. One of the things that people are most scared of when they think about blood flow restriction training is that what if I overdo it? What if I hold that blood locally in one location for so long? Maybe my arm's going to fall off. There are all these fears people have, their
Sure.
arms turning blue. How does your product ensure safety for those things as opposed to what most people do is just tying a band around their arm?
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk about comfort, which is the ultimate reason you want to use bands like B3 bands. But let me give you two scenarios. Number one, we have carpal tunnel surgeries going on by the thousands every day. You go into the operating room, they crank the tourniquet down and they cut it off, and they're in there for 30 to 45 minutes. Then they release the tourniquet. You wake up in the recovery room and you're home in 2 hours. I've never heard of anybody dying. This process of manipulating blood flow in extremity is not dangerous. Number two, I tell everybody, look, go type in BFR, blood flow restriction, and death. Go type it into Google. If it's happening and it's out there, it's not happening. Why? Because when you simply slow it down, you're not cutting off blood flow. Now, of course, we don't want to cut it off, and you can do that with some of the more barbaric straps, and you've tried them, Mark. They're very painful. These are super comfortable. And then finally, let's just get to the science. Our bands, and there's a lot of bands out there now, we were one of the first ones to get started, are the only ones where we've done safety studies. What we wanted to see is when I put this band on and I start working out, did it increase the arterial pressure, the main flow coming in distally in the arm or leg? And what did it do to the heart? Are we putting stress on the heart? Here's what the study showed, Mark, and I know you've seen them. Number one, When you use these, and we'll talk about the design, there was no increased arterial pressure. It's flowing back and forth, and the arteries under any undue stress. Number two, back at the heart wasn't under any increased oxygen demand. So your heart just sees blood going out and blood going back. Now it's going faster because you're exercising, but it's not under any additional stress. And this is why, we are the choice for NFL athletes, Olympic athletes, doctors. I've got over 1,000 doctors because of the design and safety of these. But overall, blood flow restriction is very safe. And when you actually look at the damage that you can do to your body by lifting heavy over the time and overtraining, this actually becomes safer over time because you're reducing so much load on the body. And you know this, Mark, when you've used them, there's times when you use them and you're lifting a fraction of the weight, and that's way easier on your joints.
One of the things that I noticed when using your product was that instantly, as you described, in the first or second minute, I have a great pump. Now, I have used traditional, how we would say, barbaric blood flow restriction bands before, and they are tight on my arm, but I never get that pump.
Right.
What's the difference?
Well, you have muscle spindles and Golgi tendon organs, and we won't go into a lot of science. You got receptors in your muscles, everyone. And if you overstress the muscle, right, you may have noticed you'll reach over and grab something and you'll go to move and you're like, uh-oh, and you'll put it down. Your muscles will shut down. If you use a barbaric or over tightening tourniquet strap, you'll be able to get to the burn, but your muscles are going to sense trauma and stress, and they're going to start to shut down, and you're not going to be able to get that. So what you felt, Mark, is there's the pump, and then you're like, oh, that just hurts, and you don't get the same thing. When you put a band on, not a tourniquet, not an elastic wrap, a band that was actually designed specifically to do BFR, the muscle doesn't sense all this stress. Hence, you can get to the pump and then you can keep going and you're like, oh, wow. I mean, pump and burn, and you know what comes next, everyone. Anabolic signal, growth hormone, muscles. So you're doing it in a way, Mark, that doesn't shut down your muscles by putting some type of weird stress into it that the muscle doesn't like. And that's what'll happen. You use some voodoo floss or some elastic tourniquets, you're going to have a tough time getting that to be a comfortable experience.
You brought up growth hormone a few different times, and I want to address that because as we get older, there is less and less growth hormone being produced. And as we know, growth hormone is extremely important. If we think about when we were younger, we were leaner, we were putting on lean muscle, and growth hormone measured by IGF-1 is a critical component for that. As someone who's getting older now and getting into training, tell us a little bit about how this growth hormone is increased during this training, why it's important, and is it long lasting or is it just in the moment?
Sure. Great question. Here's where I like to start. I'm 61. I don't know how old our listeners are, 30s, 40s. Look, I don't want to feel 61. I don't want to look 61. I've got a beautiful young Latin wife, and I don't want to function like I'm 61, right? And there's only one way that I can change that. I've got to elevate growth hormone. Right when I'm 25, it's up here. When I'm 60, I'm at about 10% of the growth hormone I had at 25, and we all feel it. Now, you learned a long time ago in elementary school about exercise, right? Now, you can go juice and get the synthetic injections, and there's all kinds of side effects. Or guess what's sitting up here? Even though you're only getting 10%, the growth hormone is still there and the IGF-1 is still there. So it's there your whole life. You're just not accessing it. Well, if you can create the burn, and this is the secret, you've got to create lactic acid. You can release growth hormone, and I'll dive back into the science in a minute. So here's my motto. I'm going to do BFR every day. Some days 5 minutes, some days 15. Some days I only change my clothes. And I'm going to produce enough lactic acid, key enough, to get a big surge of growth hormone. And it comes out right after exercise, and it peaks at about 3 hours. But Mark, the effects downstream last 24 to 36. Boosts the thyroid, turns on fat metabolism. Out comes IGF-1, up goes testosterone. Bone-specific alkaline phosphatase, your bones get stronger. Brain-derived nootropic factor, your brain functions better. Immune system gets stimulated. T killer cells go up. Circulation improves everywhere. I mean, it's like rocket fuel. It's like going back to 25. So going back to my motto, I'm not interested in that 61-year-old growth hormone. I want to feel 35. So I'm going to do it every day and bump my growth hormone. As soon as it starts, I'm going to bump it again, and I'm going to keep it up here. That is what people are seeing with BFR. Is you look in the mirror, you love the way you're looking, you get lean, but the way you feel and function is a massive game changer. And we're going to talk about this. We've been taught that if you don't micro tear your muscle, you can't. That's not true. We're going to talk about this a little bit. If you can produce lactic acid from doing BFR or heavy training, and you produce enough of it, you're going to get growth hormone. And I want you to imagine one thing. When you get these, I want you to imagine it'd be like this. You call some world famous doctor and you make an appointment, and he goes into your pituitary gland and painlessly pulls out your growth hormone. And he takes it over in his lab and he replicates your natural growth hormone. And he gives it to you in a little injection, and you take it every day. And you've got the fountain of youth, elevated growth hormone every day of your life, and no side effects. That's what BFR is. And I'll tell you, you're going to feel it, and you're going to notice it, and you're going to function, much younger than you normally would.
For those listening, can we just give some approximate numbers in terms of what is the percentage increase one can see in testosterone or growth hormone if they're using this product every single day?
Well, if we're talking, let's go with the elite, the Olympic, the bodybuilders, people like you, Mark, right? You're going to see maybe a 10%, 20% increase in growth hormone. It's going to be little because you're already hitting fatigue points. But Mark, you're going to, as you know, you're going to dramatically reduce stress, and your cortisol is going to come down from not beating up your body, which means the growth hormone is going to have a stronger effect. Cortisol and growth hormone don't play well together. So what elite notice is they recover faster, they can get a more efficient workout, and they actually grow faster, right? It's like an edge. Now let's go to John Q. Public. John Q. Public, people that aren't used to elite training, and you would go to the gym versus BFR, you're taking 10x to 25x, Mark. Massive change. Not 10%. By the way, everyone, 10 to 20%, you're published if you can elevate growth hormone. This is 10x to 25x, and we've got all the studies, right? So either way, you're bumping growth hormone. And people like me at 61 who can't go do an hour of just brutal training, game changer. I mean, I'm getting growth hormone that there's no way I could, even if I wanted to go to the gym, I couldn't do the work to get it. It's just too hard on my body. So, I mean, for 99% of the population, this is a massive bump in growth hormone. And Mark, I travel around and I measure blood lactate. You know this. And we measure it before and after, because when you create enough lactic acid, right? I'll give you two scenarios. Here's the average person: 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. Oh, there's the burn. 7, 8, stop. That lactic acid gets cleared right here in the muscle. Here's what Mark does: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, burn. And the trainer sitting next to him says, "Hey, sissy, we're just getting started," right? And there's 20 more. And he's producing at least 20 seconds of lactic acid per set. When you produce that amount of lactic acid, it exceeds lactate threshold. For the geeks on the call, right? Which means there's so much that it can't get cleared in the mitochondria, and it gets out into the bloodstream, and it acts like a pharmacy. It turns on these incredible systems in your body. And one of those is growth hormone, then IGF-1. Another one is brain-derived nootropic factor. I mean, we can go on and on about what this does. So the key here to getting this is producing enough lactic acid. Now let's go back. I actually measure people. It's real easy. Anybody wants to, you can go on Amazon, buy $199 blood lactate meter, check it before, prick your ear, check it after. Most people 300 to 500% increase. And some people, 800 to 1,000% increase, like you're doping. And these increases in circulating lactate, and we may talk about exactly where does that come from. It's the burn. Most people could never go get that unless they train like you, Mark, and they got a trainer and somebody's pushing them and screaming in their ear, right? And you're jumping in an ice bath the next day to recover.
Not only does you mentioned that how this type of training isn't just possible in a gym at a certain age because the body's breaking down. I think one of the biggest advantages is also the time commitment. The average
Yeah.
population, we don't have the time to be able to drive to a gym, work out, and come back. It's almost 2 hours of the day. And
Hmm.
the average dad, average mom, don't have that much time. So being able to, one of the other benefits that I saw from the band was like, even if it was the worst conditions outside and I couldn't make it to the gym, I could just train at home with 15 minutes and
Yep.
pretty much get the same results and pump, if not better.
Yeah, it's crazy. Think about it. Let's go back to the burn. What's the average person do? They go work out for an hour and let's call it 20 sets, right? They get 5 seconds of burn times 20, that's 100 seconds. They're in the gym for 45 minutes and they're getting a minute and a half of burn. Here's BFR. BFR is going to eliminate all those 45 minutes and we're going to get to the burn really quick in 10 minutes and we're going to get 5 to 6 minutes of burn. So 45 minutes and 2 minutes of burn or 10 minutes and 5 minutes of burn. You're going to eliminate all that stress and wasted time, and you're going to get right to where you get the results. And like you said, Mark, you can get into the bands and you're in the burn right now, and then you can keep going and you can hit a few muscle groups and you're done. And guess what, everyone? The secret to muscle is not load. The secret is you got to produce lactic acid. Prior to the bans, we had to use load. Why? Because if you use a lightweight, you know what's going to happen, Mark. You're not even going to feel the burn. So you got to load. You got to use 70% of one rep max, right? And then you get the burn. But the byproduct of that is you get some muscle inflammation. Some people call it micro tearing, maybe some joint, and then you got a recovery period. With this, we're going metabolically, not mechanically to produce the burn, metabolically. Remember, oxygen mask, reducing oxygen, cutting off the oxygen supply, getting into the burn super fast, right? And producing a similar or greater amount of lactic acid. Both pathways work, and this one's more efficient. Quick story for you. Anybody want to? I hear this all the time. Oh, you can't get stronger and build muscle. Okay, well, maybe the world's strongest man knows a thing or two. Mitchell Hooper. Everybody go type in Mitchell Hooper, Hooper, BFR. He does it every single workout. And this is the strongest man in the world. No dummy, one of the smartest guys in the world, too. And he'll tell you, I do it because I can stimulate my muscles differently and at times more aggressively and reduce load. Now, he still lifts heavy weights, but listen to what he says. I'm more efficient and I can reduce load. I can extend my career. I can reduce risk and injury. And I know, Mark, you've said this too. You can go still get that same awesome fatiguing workout and take load off your body and reduce risk, right? And save time.
The general population, we already laid out how they can get the effect of a hard workout at a gym in just 10 to 15 minutes at home. But let's talk about elite athletes,
Hmm.
right? One of the things that elite athletes struggle from is recovery.
Yeah.
Even if you're going to the gym for an hour and you're pushing yourself really hard, that's a lot on the body sometimes. And there's a recovery problem. So
Hmm.
one, if an elite athlete is listening to this, we all like to train a lot. We're addicted to training. Could we do more than one session a day, one BFR and one regular weight training to see potentially increased results due to the added workout? Or do you think one is a replacement for another?
Well, I'm going to make it real easy for you, elite athletes, bodybuilders. If you are able to reduce load and stress on the body by 50% and get better results, do you think that would, right, result in faster recovery? Of course it would. Okay. So we have three protocols. And by the way, you don't get things like these protocols from other BFR companies. You get them from my company. This is why, Mark Wahlberg, Thor, God of Thunder, Kansas City Chiefs, Lakers, right? This is why they trust in our product and our protocol. I'll teach you three protocols. One is alternating normal, and BFR sessions. So if you have 6 heavy days in the gym, you're going to change that to 3 heavy days, 3 light BFR days. You're going to reduce load by about 40 to 50%, and you're going to be shocked at the results. Okay, that's one workout. Number 2, we'll do a starter. We'll put the bands on in the first 25% of your workout. We'll just do some BFR. And then we'll go do the heavies, but only 50%. The muscles are going to be all pumped and burning from the BFR when you dive into the heavy, right? We talked about this a little bit, Mark. And then you can do a finisher. We'll do 50 to 60%. So let's say we're doing bench. Instead of 6 sets, we'll do 4, right? Then we'll pump up the bands real quick, and then we'll dive into 1 burnout set. Reducing load. So all 3 of these reduce load. But here's what else it does. It stimulates faster and more lactic acid. And this signal going up to the anabolic pathway is stronger. And I know it because, again, I measure blood lactate, which is the trigger. So if the signal is stronger because you're able to produce more lactic acid, and you felt this, Mark, your anabolic response is greater. Testosterone, IGF-1, and growth hormone are greater. So the end result is, 1, you reduce load. That's a quicker recovery. But 2, the anabolic signal is greater. Now, let me teach everybody on the call something, athletes, that probably nobody's ever taught you. And you've heard about it. Cortisol. Story. I'm 52 years old. I can go to the gym. Okay, this was 9 years ago, and I'm all beat up. But I can go there. I can pound the heavy weights, right? And I can get a positive anabolic signal. So do your math. I'm going to get a +4 anabolic signal. I'm going to produce lactic acid from using heavy weights, but I'm 61 and I've got stress in my joints. So I'm getting a stress response or a cortisol response, inflammation, overtraining, right? So I'm 52 years old. I can't get the 6-pack. I got little, my arms are too small. I can't go anywhere because my stress signal is a 4. Anabolic 4 minus stress 4 is what, everyone? It's a big goose egg. I'm going nowhere. And many people are experiencing this. You're overtrained. Now, I switched to BFR and I get the same +4. I actually think I got a +5, but let's say we're going to create the same fatigue, just dramatically easier, and the stress signal's only a 1. What's 4 minus 1, everyone? That's called a positive anabolic +3. In 30 days, I got my 6-pack that I hadn't seen in 15 years. I started growing. I wasn't hurting. So what I did is I reduced the stress signal, because if you overstress your body, the growth hormone's not even going to get out and do anything. Stress, fear for life, flight or fight, you've heard these things. It is a stronger, signal in the body. The body's going to preserve at all costs. So many of you're overtraining and you're literally stuck and not going anywhere. So one of the big benefits here, and Mark, you experience this, if we can reduce that stress signal maybe from a 3 to a 2 and still get that 4 or 5, you just doubled or tripled your anabolic signal.
You have reviewed over 1,000 papers on BFR.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the most groundbreaking studies or findings that still astound you when you found them?
Well, I was listening to a doctor the other day, and she used a great term. Your muscles are a pharmacy. Your muscles have opioids and cannabinoids, pain relievers. Your muscles stimulate macrophages, anti-inflammatory white blood cells. So there's your ibuprofen system, right? Your cannabinoids, right? There's your Tylenol system, right? And then you've got the immune system T killer cells. Boom, up goes your immune system. And then you got nitric oxide, thins the blood, opens up the blood vessels. Now you improve all the circulation throughout the body. Okay? This pharmacy, I never knew in my wildest dreams that I had a pharmacy right in my muscles that could do all these things. Now, what do the studies show? Better improvements in blood pressure, increases in bone density, improved peripheral circulation, helps the brain function, protects neuroplasticity in the brain, reverses hardening of the arteries and atherosclerosis in your blood vessels, improves circulation to ischemic heart disease, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, chronic kidney disease. all proven in studies. And your joints, the biggest shocker to me was joints, right? Painful joints. What everybody needs to understand is as you have trauma and age, you lose good blood flow, right? And oxygen and blood flow can't get in there. When you do BFR and you get that burn, you get the nitric oxide. Most people call that the gym buzz or the runner's high. You increase circulation. And all of a sudden, I mean, everybody says the same thing. Oh my gosh, my shoulder doesn't hurt. My back doesn't hurt. And when you start doing it on a regular basis, the biggest change I've seen is people's reporting of total elimination of joint pain or dramatic improvement in joint pain or heading off surgeries or not or recovering from surgeries. So in summary, these 1,000 papers, here's what they show. This anabolic signal, this getting the fatigue in your muscles is as important as sleep and diet. It's that important. It is one of the most important things you can do in your body to keep your body healthy.
I have a personal experience with this joint pain, and especially coming up to nationals. Whenever I did a straight arm curls, I always had shearing elbow pain. And when I was in the last couple of weeks from nationals and I was at a very low body fat percentage, it was unbearable pain. So I have personal experience with switching to BFR and dropping from a 120-pound straight bar curl to a 25-pound curl. And
Yeah.
the stimulus was the same. So I can personally attest for the pain removal aspect of it as well. There's so many benefits to BFR, and it's been around for a while, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there are so many misconceptions that are still out there that's stopping it from having widespread adoption. Even though more and more people are getting educated every day, I
Yeah.
still feel like how beneficial it is really. There's still a problem with widespread adoption. How do you aim to overcome that? Tell us
Mm-hmm.
about it.
Well, first of all, right, we got to get some respected people like you, Mark, and the Kansas City Chiefs and the doctors and Dr. Mercola, right, famous doctor online. They're using BFR now. They've figured it out, right? I got pictures of LeBron on my phone doing BFR, right? I got pictures of Wahlberg on my phone, Thor over in Australia, Chris Helmsworth, right? They've figured out that's number one, but number two, it's an education process. It's not a jump rope. Right. So what I've aspired to do, Mark, and we're achieving is, it takes 20 or 30, 40 minutes of education. As you know, Adriana, you met her. She's one of the top shows on E360. Her show just aired today. It's through these processes and some videos I've made to where you've got to use common language first. So people go, yeah, I understand, right? No pain, no gain. And then you got to show them the alternative. But look, in summary, everyone, here's how I relate it. Back in the 80s, right, when you flew cross country, back when, some of you aren't as old as me, right, you had to stop, right? You couldn't go New York to LA, right? You had to stop in Chicago. But now there was a direct flight. Well, nobody stops in Chicago. Let me ask everyone, if there's now a direct flight in building muscle and you don't have all this stopping in Chicago and refueling, and you're going to go on orbits, are you going to choose the layover in Chicago? Or are you going to take the direct flight? Well, there's a new direct flight in exercise, right? It's like surgical procedures that advanced. We now know that the secret to creating change in the body through exercise occurs in those deep fatigue points, the HIIT method. And we're seeing the industry changing, right? Quicker workouts, more intense. Well, that's what BFR is. BFR is a biohack. It's a hack into creating more efficient exercise. And here's where the rubber meets the road, Mark. When you get the bands, right? You get a 30-day money back guarantee. Mark, you put them on. What did you feel? Your brain goes, oh, I know what that is, right?
Immediately, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's the key is just getting people to accept giving them a try because when you put the bands on, here's what your brain does. Your brain goes, "Oh, I know what that is. That's fatigue, but how in the world did I get here in 30 seconds?"
Yeah, I want to stress this on my audience that for those who listen to the podcast, this is the very first time I've had anybody come on a podcast and talk about a product. And because it needs to be talked about. I'm extremely skeptical, and I have been in this industry for a very long time. I've suffered a lot from buying a lot of junk that just doesn't work. And I will be honest, as a skeptical guy who is science-based and is an engineer by trade, I was skeptical about this product until I used it. And like Dr. Mike said, it was 30 seconds into the training, I knew exactly what was happening.
Yep.
So I cannot speak more on this, good about this. Let me ask you this from a business perspective, Dr. Mike. As an entrepreneur who's also an expert in this niche field, how do you balance running a business with staying at the forefront of research and education?
Well, that's the challenge, right, Mark, for entrepreneurs, right? Right, Mark, like you've got incredible talents, but behind the scenes, you got to be able to run it, right? I think number one, I would say, you got to go out and get some experience, right? You can't just come out of high school and college and, in my opinion, be great at building and selling and networking and be great at running a business. So, I learned how to run a business through my chiropractic business and running another company. And then you pick up things from people like Mark's, and, famous people about how to motivate and how to sell. And number three, you got to have something you're passionate about. I'm passionate, right? I don't worry about the bottom line. I'm going to pay attention to it. I worry about helping people. I'm passionate about BFR. And when you find something like that, if that passion comes out, people are going to listen to you, right? They're going to listen to your message and they're going to try what you have to offer. And then you just make sure you surround yourself with some smart people so you can keep that balance going. But Mark, it's not easy. That's why a lot of people, don't succeed initially trying to be entrepreneurs in this world. But if you keep trying though, and you get some experience, you will succeed.
So many entrepreneurs, we go into this because we're passionate about what we're doing. But the challenges and the obstacles are sometimes demotivating.
Yeah.
So for the entrepreneurs who are listening to this, what are some of the challenges that you faced when building B3 Sciences and how did you navigate them?
Well, first, when I decided to retire from chiropractic, everybody thought I was lost my mind. I had a 5,000 square foot building, 8 employees. I mean, we were cooking. I spent 12 years building that up, right? So when I decided to retire from chiropractic because I wanted to get into the networking world, I mean, people thought I was crazy. But I listened to enough motivational people and I heard some very important things. Number one, if you're going to go, you can't go 90%. So I burned all the bridges behind me, meaning there's no bridge behind me. I can't go back, right? So I got out of chiropractic. I sold it. I walked away. I took a lot less, but there was no bridge behind me. I had no choice but to keep going forward. That was number one. And number two, I was taught to get a clear vision of where you're going, right? Because you're going to have days when you don't know where you're going or if you're going to get there. And you got to remember it's out there. It's like my new wife, right? I visioned, this type of relationship. And one of the things she's attracted to is I have a vision for where we're going, right? So even though occasionally she gets, she's Latin, she gets a little fiery. She said, "Why don't you ever get upset?" I said, "Because I'm out here. I'm out there in the future, right? I'm focusing on my vision. I'm not worried about all the noise right here." So when you wake up and things are challenging, you better have some goals or some vision statements or a picture of where you're going. And that's what got me through. Because let me tell you, I mean, I've had a lot of days where I wondered, man, are we going to make it? Right? Am I going to get through this hurdle? And then I remember where I'm going and, and I trust in God, that, he's going to help me get there. So, that's been one of my secrets and it's not a secret. I think I'm just smart enough to listen to successful people before me, which is key.
Talking about goals, what are your goals for B3 Sciences in the next 5 years?
Well, number one is to change as many lives as possible, right? We have, I'm concerned about obesity, insulin resistance, cholesterol, and cancer. And we're missing the boat. I'm not going to attack the medical profession because we need them. They save lives, but we are missing the boat on all the natural things. And, whether you're religious or not, that in my opinion, God gave us, right? And my vision is to help people add that third component: sleep, diet, exercise, right? That's number one. And number two, to make a big enough impact in my life that maybe for the first time in my 60 years, we can change the course of obesity and bone density and insulin resistance. We can get enough people, right, using exercise and good diet and sleep, and maybe we can start reversing and we can start living longer, right? Because no offense to the medical profession, we're not getting anywhere. People aren't living longer, right? I mean, we got more insulin resistance and hypercholesterol than we've ever had, more obesity than we've ever had. So, something's got to change. And, I want to be part of that change.
So many products are coming out, and not every entrepreneur, business owner has the honesty and the good intention that you carry. And we're all drawn towards gimmick products that bring out some magical solution that really don't work.
Yeah.
As someone who is in this industry and very much ingrained into new products coming out, are there any other emerging technologies or trends that you are particularly excited about that's coming out next?
Well, I pay a lot of attention to the EMF world, right? We got a lot of these things that help block EMF, right? So I try to make sure I reduce some EMF coming in my body. And we got a lot of new technologies that introduce frequencies into the body, like earthing and EMF mats. So I'm fascinated by that and frequency, right? Everything's a frequency. That's one of the things I'm fascinated with. Here's the other one I'm fascinated with. This blood sugar in the body. I watched a video yesterday from a guy, and it's going to be groundbreaking in cancer, but sugar. When there's too much sugar, right, cancer tends to thrive and grow, right? And everybody has heard if you starve the cancer cells of sugar, right, you can actually have an impact. Now, I don't want to go into making claims, but BFR exercise is similar. BFR and vigorous exercise is important to use up, and it's actually 20 to 25% of your dietary sugar should be used up by exercise, right? Glycogen, that's sugar. The people who don't exercise, that extra 25% is running around, and it causes a mess. Obesity, insulin resistance, diabetes, all kinds of problems. So I'm fascinated by what we're seeing out there about this new research on keto and intermittent fasting and blood sugar control. And I think the missing piece to all that, what I want to see come in there, is that if we add vigorous exercise, right, this could have a dramatic impact, on all these sugar problems we're having as a society, because it's rampant. It's a rampant problem. And now we're all running towards these injections, right? I don't want to jump on those, but everybody's on the injection bandwagon. Well, check back in 2 years. We all know where that'll be, right? There'll be too many lawsuits, and it'll be old news.
There's something to be said about a man who had an extremely successful practice as a chiropractor, who finds something that he truly believes in, leaves the chiropractic world to start from scratch, and then, having discovered this thing, wants to share it with the world because he believes that he can make the world a better place through his tiny little contribution. And it's just an honor and a privilege to meet you, Dr. Mike, because
Thank you.
there aren't many people who are doing this.
I know.
In a world where everybody worships the almighty dollar, goodness and truthfulness and honesty is getting lost. And the fact that you're bringing all of that through your products, through Breathe Sciences, is nothing short of just amazing. Last words for our audience members, where they can find you, anything else you want to share?
Well, I'm fortunate I was raised by two parents who told me money takes care of itself. Sure, you got to focus on it. But, I heard this time and time again from my parents, right? You're not going to be on your deathbed saying, I wish I had more money, right? You're gonna be thinking about who you loved, your experiences, your relationships, in the next part of your life, right? So that was important, and then, I'm not a super religious person, right? But, I believe everybody's got to have a foundation. And if this isn't your foundation, I hope you find one, right? For what's really important in life. So, I appreciate you recognizing that. I think that comes across from people, is that, my motivation is to help you. And I'll tell you what my fuel is, Mark. I get to hear stories, right? Imagine getting up every day and hearing a new wild story. Oh my gosh, my bone density went up 12%. I don't have osteoporosis anymore. That's my life. I mean, it's not even like work. It's like when I told you, Mark, you got to text me when you use them. I got to hear the story, man. How'd you do at nationals, right? That gives me fuel. So I would hope you could find something in your life that, and my son's going through that, right? He's out of college now. I said, hey, son, don't worry about the dollar. Find something you're passionate about, right? And that you can have fun and be doing. If you want to find us, right? Mark's going to put his website link in there, MarkT dot b3sciences.com. That's where you can find us. When you get the bands, by the way, everyone, I'm going to want you to come join me. You're going to get 30 days free on our online fitness platform. It's called B3U. We've got an online fitness platform. We do live workouts. We do 2 a day. Eventually, we'll get up to 5 a day. I do live calls every Saturday. You can come join me, ask questions, learn more about BFR. So the important part is getting the bands, but then get into our community so you can learn and share and get motivated by other people. And I can help you learn about this technology because I want to see you get results. And by the way, that your first 30 days on that platform is free on B3U, and your first 30 days is money back guarantee. So if you get these bands and you don't absolutely love them, you send them back dirty, sweaty, we're going to get you a refund. But I'll tell you this, there's only one kind of bands that come back. That's the ones that people don't put on, because if you put them on, you're going to feel it. You're going to know what it is, and be careful because you're probably going to get addicted to this, and it's a good addiction.
Absolutely, absolutely. Someone who has used this band for the very first time, I can describe the experience that I had, and then uses this band on an everyday basis. 100%. I think there cannot be a more generous offer than giving a 30-day money back guarantee, because the only person who would give a guarantee like that is someone who truly understands and is confident about the product. So,
Yep.
thank you so much, Dr. Mike, for being on the show, for teaching us about BFR. And I hope, people listening to this truly understand the magic of this product and give it a try.
Thanks, Mark. It's great to be here. And I look forward to seeing your results because I know you're close. You're
Absolutely.
right. You're right there to being a national champion and going pro. And man, I'm going to take a lot of pride in knowing I had just a little part in helping you get there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thanks, Mark.